Good morning. How are you guys doing today? Doing well here. We have our daughter and her husband and their 3 kids here. So they got here yesterday, around 4:15 or so. So we had a good night with our family. It was nice to see everybody. They slept pretty well. They weren't up too early. I think they're all downstairs, I don't know, doing something, getting ready for the day, chilling out downstairs. But so far, it's been a good visit. Looking forward to spending time with them. They are here from Oklahoma. They live in Clinton, Oklahoma. I've done, last year, we went down, I think we went down there twice. So I've done some morning devotionals with them. Like I said, they live in Clinton. That is where Joel, Katie's husband Joel, actually works at the same church where Willie Coop worked. So Willie hired Joel before, I think about a year before they moved up here, before the Coops moved back to Scottsbluff. So our son-in-law worked for Willie for a while, which is really awesome. Nice little weird connection within the Christian church. So yeah, they're here. They're going to be here through Sunday, is their plan right now. So Ann and I are going to be getting a lot of grandkid time in, and we're just really excited about that, to be able to spend time with them. So we are today. We are in chapter 6 of the book of Genesis, picking up where we left off last week. And so this is going to continue, chapter 6 is going to continue that design pattern that we have been talking about over the past, we talked about it a lot last week, how we see just things kind of in repeat and repetition. Chapter 5, so just a reminder, chapter 5 began with the phrase, this is the written account of the descendants of Adam. Chapter 4 began with the phrase, now Adam had sexual relations with his wife, Eve, and she became pregnant. In chapter 4:17, Cain had sexual relations with his wife. In chapter 4:25, Adam had sexual relations with his wife again. Then we have the written account of the descendants. Chapter 3, we get introduced to the serpent. Chapter 1, we get introduced to God. So we have all of these just on repeat, these design patterns. And chapter 6 begins in a very similar way. So let's read, just listen. So I'm going to read the first 8 verses of chapter 6. And I just want you to listen to like where you've heard something similar before, and I'll try to visually cue you when that happens. Then the people began to multiply on the earth, and daughters were born to them. That sounds a lot like this is the written account of the descendants of Adam. The sons of God saw beautiful women and took any they wanted as their wives. So that sounds a lot like Eve sees the fruit, it looks good, so she takes it. Right? Do you see that similarity? Then the Lord said, my spirit will not put up with humans for such a long time, for they are only mortal flesh. In the future, their normal lifespan will be no more than 120 years. In those days, and for some time after, giant Nephilites lived on the earth, for whenever the sons of God had intercourse with women, they gave birth to children who became the heroes and famous warriors of ancient times. So there's that same piece again, right? I'm doing more than a visual cue, aren't I? I'm just telling you. Just like Adam had sexual relations with Eve and she became pregnant, and Cain had sexual relations with his wife and she became pregnant, and Adam had sexual relations with his wife again and she became pregnant. The Nephilites, they had sexual relations with women, and their offspring were children who became the heroes and famous warriors of ancient times. I want you to just see this design pattern. The Lord observed the extent of human wickedness on the earth, and he saw that everything they thought or imagined was consistently and totally evil. Right? So that's God again, right? Adam, where are you? So the Lord was sorry he ever made them and put them on the earth. It broke his heart. I want you to see that the primary emotion driving God in this moment is not anger. There are a lot of people, when we read this, we're like, oh, God got so angry with humanity that he, killed them all. We tend to put our own, understanding of emotions on God. That's what we would do, right? We get so angry, that's our response. But God's response to all of this evil was not, it actually wasn't anger. It was sadness. That was his initial emotional response. And the Lord said, I will wipe this human race I have created from the face of the earth. Yes, and I will destroy every living thing, all the people, the large animals, the small animals that scurry along the ground, even the birds of the sky. I'm sorry I ever made them. We talked about this a few weeks ago. It's important to remember that our sin affects everything. Our sin affects creation itself. And that's why I think it's in Romans, Paul writes something like creation groans as it waits for the Messiah. That's a really big paraphrase. But Paul says that creation itself is groaning. So our sinfulness affects everything. But Noah found favor with the Lord. Now here you go. Here's that design pattern. This is the account of Noah and his family. How did Genesis 5 begin? This is the written account of the descendants of Adam. Now, in the middle of chapter 6, we have the account of Noah and his family. So we're introduced now to a new character. Noah was a righteous man, the only blameless man living on earth at the time, and he walked in close fellowship with God. Noah was the father of 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Do you see how the writer of Genesis contrasts Noah with all of the other people? I have to remember what hand I'm doing when I do that. On one hand, we have the extent of human wickedness on the earth. And everything that they did was wicked and totally evil. On the other hand, now we are introduced to a character named Noah, who is righteous, blameless, walking in close fellowship with God. He's not rejected God. He's walking in close fellowship with God. Right? So just in these first 6 chapters of the book of the Bible, we are bombarded with contrasting people. Some people are obedient to God. Most people, a lot of people, the vast majority of the people are not living in obedience with God. So we're being presented here with a choice, with an option about how we are going to live our lives. Now God saw that the earth had become corrupt and was filled with violence. God observed all this corruption in the world, for everyone on earth was corrupt. So God said to Noah, I've decided to destroy all the living creatures, for they filled the earth with violence. Yes, I'll wipe them out along with the earth. Build a large boat from cypress wood and waterproof it with tar inside and out. Then construct decks and stalls throughout its interior. Make the boat 450 long, 50 feet long, 75 feet wide, and 45 feet high. Leave an 18-inch opening below the roof all the way around the boat. Put a door on the side and build 3 decks inside the boat, lower, middle, and upper. Look, I am about to cover the earth with a flood that will destroy every living thing that breathes. Everything on earth will die. but I will confirm my covenant with you. See, so there we go. Like, God is making this promise. So enter the boat, you and your wife and your sons and their wives. Bring a male of every kind of animal, a male and female, into the boat with you to keep them alive during the flood. Pairs of every kind of bird and every kind of animal and every kind of small animal that scurries along the ground will come to you to be kept alive. And be sure to take on board enough food for you, for your family, and for all the animals. So Noah did exactly as God had commanded him. Right? So here we go. We've just seen this contrast. We've seen these design patterns over and over and over again. The similarities of stories, the similarities of scenes, and this contrast between Moses and the rest of humanity. And the difference between Moses and his family, or excuse me, I don't mean to say Moses. The difference between Noah and his family and everyone else is that everything they do, everything everyone else does, everything they think or imagine is consistently and totally evil. When you contrast that with the life of Noah, Noah is righteous and blameless because he is living in accordance with what God would have him do. And remember, this is also important. If we go back to chapter 5, in the NLT, it says this. And Noah, verse 28. When Lamech was 182 years old, he became the father of a son. Lamech named his son Noah, for he said, may he bring us relief from our work and the painful labor of farming this ground that the Lord has cursed. After the birth of Noah, Lamech lived another 595 years, and he had other sons and daughters. Lamech lived 777 years, and he died, and Noah was 500 years old, and he became the father of Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Right? So Noah is in the line of Adam. And we talked a little bit about this, I think, on Thursday of last week. On the one hand, there's the line of the descendants of Cain, right? So that's the little heading. I'm not always a fan of headings in Bibles, but the heading at the beginning of chapter 17, at least in my Bible, says the descendants of Cain. And what did the descendants of Cain do? They brought pain, death, chaos, and destruction. The descendants of Adam in chapter 5 ends with Noah. And what does Noah do? Noah is going to bring life. So again, we just see these two contrasting viewpoints. We see these two contrasting lines of descendants and bloodlines. One of them is going to bring chaos, death, and destruction. The other one is going to bring life. That's the plan. What happens? We're going to finish reading through the flood narrative over the next couple days. We're not going to get through the whole thing before the end of the week. But I would encourage you this week, among all of the millions of other things that I know you're doing, I know they're good things. I would just encourage you to read through the end of chapter 9 this week. So that'll kind of be the boundaries of your assignment this week of reading, is through the end of chapter 9. I don't think we're going to get to the end of chapter 9 this week. It'll probably be next week before we get to 9. But just to continue to read and study and understand this flood narrative and what's going on here, and how God's doing lots of things that we're not going to get into today. So I love you, and I want to encourage you that the path to life comes from obedience to God. The path to life comes from choosing to be obedient to what God would have you do, to allow God to decide for you and to discern for you what is right and what is wrong, to not settle for your own understanding of right and wrong. Like when we read through the Bible and we're only 6 chapters in, we've seen that every single time mankind decides for himself or for herself what the right thing to do is without understanding what God has called them to do, it leads to chaos, death, and destruction. And God's path leads to light and to life. So we should pray together. God, thanks for this morning. Thank you for your word today. Just ask that you would be with everyone that's watching and is going to watch. Help us to live lives that honor and glorify you in the midst of all of the things that are going on around us. Help us to remember that we're called to be righteous, and that people need to see and knowingly observe the righteousness that comes from you. Help us to live in a way that brings you honor, that brings you glory, so that people can see that righteousness. And help us to be willing to talk about where that righteousness comes from you, from your Son Jesus, and because of the Holy Spirit that dwells inside of each one of us. We ask these things in the name of your Son Jesus. Amen. I love you guys. I'm praying with you and I'm praying for you. I know, this is probably a different study than anything that we've ever done. We're going, I think, going a little deeper than what we've done in the past. But what I'm trying to do, what I really want to do, is not just, I don't want us to just read the Bible together. I want to teach you how to read the Bible. I want to teach you how to study the Bible. So we're going to be talking about a lot of things, I guess, over the next 50 chapters, which is going to take us forever. If you thought Psalms was long, we're going to be in Genesis for a while. And what I'm trying to do is to teach you how to read the Bible, so that you can read it, you can study it, you can learn it, you can live it, you can love it for yourself, and see what God has for you. So I love you guys, praying with you, praying for you, looking forward to seeing you tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. We will read Genesis chapter 7 together, and you can get a head start by reading it yourself. Have a great rest of your day. We'll see you soon.